I think we're live.
Hello guys, this is me, I'm Shabir. Assalamu alaikum everyone, and
Assalamu alaikum everybody, Nabil here. So
we're going to go for this WebEx series by kosher scientists, and we are really looking forward to like your queries and questions regarding counseling. What are the different options for studying outside India? And what are the different things that people need to take into consideration while applying for masters or PhDs or postdoc positions in the US or in Canada as well. I think a little bit about myself. I did my bachelor's from Kashmir University, Degree College Pulwama, and afterwards I did my master's in biotechnology from Pune University, followed by a PhD in University of Zurich in biophysics and laser spectroscopy. And then I ended up at a joint program of MIT and Harvard, which is where I am right now. I mainly focus on my main focus on research is actually on 3D bioprinting and also on biophotonics. We are actually trying to develop different kinds of tools to help bioengineers to study microphysiological systems. So Nabil,
Sure.
A little bit about yourself.
Assalamu alaikum everybody. My name is Nabil. I was born in Kashmir and I came here to the United States when we were very young, and I studied here. So I did my studies here. I graduated from Boston University. I did a master's research in Harvard Medical School in synthetic biology. Currently, right now, I'm working at Moderna Therapeutics industry, also looking at nanoparticles and relevance towards translational medicine. So I'm here as a moderator, so I'll be taking your questions. Feel free to ask things. Please be precise with the questions, and we look forward to having a great session here.
Yeah, so I think we'd like to request all the members who are watching and who are in need of clearing their doubts or need some more information regarding the whole application process, regarding what type of different careers they are available, and at the same time also trying to look into the research that people are actually doing in different parts of the world. So we'll be really looking forward for your questions, I guess.
Yeah.
So,
Nothing so far.
Nothing so
Getting
far.
your comments, though. Yeah, it's good.
So I'm not sure. I think since we're still waiting for the questions, and we can start with very basic things about what to keep in mind while people are still trying to actually apply for different positions all over the world. I think one of the most important things depends upon the stage at which you are applying, right? So.
Yep.
You have stages. For example, people are actually trying to come out of Kashmir after doing their 12th, and then there are also people who finish their bachelor's somewhere in Kashmir or in India, and then they come for masters in different parts of the world, and then the majority of the students actually who always come out, or most of the times come out, is after post masters. So they finish their master's degree and then they come for their PhD in different universities.
Yeah.
So I think all these different stages have their different requirements.
Yeah.
Not one requirement actually fits all. So it has to be very specific. You need to know what are the things that you need to take care of. How is the application process, because effectively it seems that there are actually also different exams that people have to take into consideration at different levels. Okay. So, right, I think you'll agree with me.
I think standardized exams are always somewhere in one of the obstacles towards multiple career paths.
So there is I see there's a question. Can you see that?
Opportunities. So. Ishfaq Kul is asking about having a low GPA in a master's degree. How much can that affect an application? So if you have your academic grades, how, if they are low, can they be affected by a good standardized test score, like a GRE score?
Well, I think it's a very good question. Most of the times we always think in a singular direction. We always it actually has to do a lot with our own educational process, how we have been actually groomed. But it's not necessarily that you always need really the best of the grades in your exams to really be in one of the best places in the world. It is an amalgamation of a lot of things. For example, yeah, it's the grades, of course. Then it is also the extracurricular activities. Then it's also how good you are with regards to like socializing, because a person would not want to actually have someone in the lab who is not social. So social, that skill actually comes into play a lot. And then of course on top of that, it's how good you do in your GRE or TOEFL or IELTS exams, or even SAT if you're actually applying for a master's or a bachelor's degree. I've seen a lot of times recently in the recent past, there have been Kashmiri students who actually did incredibly well for the SAT exams, and they got 100% marks in that one. In addition, they also got a perfect score for their TOEFL or IELTS exams, and alhamdulillah, they have actually ended up in some of the Ivy League universities. I see people actually going to Princeton and people actually going to Georgia. So, and also some of the same story.
Yeah. So you talked a little bit about the sort of the master's application processes.
Yeah.
Could you elaborate a little bit more about the MC fellowship application process?
What is the MC fellowship?
Possibly they meant master's fellowship process.
Okay, Dr. Weiss, it will be really great if you could actually come up with what do you mean by MC. It has a lot of connotations.
A lot of acronyms. We want to make sure we're being specific. Okay, so one person is asking, I'm pursuing a PhD from Jammu University. So how do we transition to taking that? How do we begin taking that if we want to study somewhere for like 6 months? How do we take that? How do we start that application? I think
that's another very good question. I think it is also, again, it is very specific to your field of research, to your lab, and to your collaborators as well. There are some fellowships which are really specific for like providing you 6 months to 1 year fellowship. There are a lot of them. I mean, you can actually look into it with the Indo-US. I know there are similar fellowships for the European universities. But again, it also depends upon, for example, what kind of collaborations you want to go for, because it has to do a lot with what you are researching on, what you study, and then the lab that is going to host to you. What is that lab specializing in? So, for example, if you're like looking at something in RNA biology, you want to actually end up in a lab which is doing RNA biology. You cannot go into something which is like related to material science unless and until there is a particular connection you want to study on. So there are different things. One is like again, like going for lab to lab collaborations. Then there is a good understanding between the two PIs, and then you can go for a 6 month to 1 year fellowship. And the second thing is going for like Indo-US, Indo-Europe, for example. There is also DAD fellowship. There is also Fulbright fellowship that actually gives you enough time for 6 months to 1 year to really do your internship in a different lab. Okay. I hope that answers the question.
Cool. And about these sort of opportunities that we have abroad, could you elaborate more about, for young chemists, opportunities in drug delivery using nanoparticles, and other tools? So where is sort of this field of nanotechnology going?
I think right now, like nanotechnology has, with regards to nanobiotechnology, we're talking about like, when we talk about drug delivery and all those applications of nanofield, then we are mainly talking about nanobiotechnology or nanomedicine. So in that sense, the field has moved a lot in the last 1 decade, wherein you have you were actually in principle in the last 10 years, like when I was doing my master's, during that time we were just like preparing nanoparticles and looking at the biocompatibility and toxicity assays. But now there is the field has moved a lot, wherein you're actually like you're using them for example quorum sensing, when you're actually using them together with bacteria. Then you use them for like photothermal ablation, or you also use it for biomimetic. That is a very new field wherein you're actually using nanoparticles to really flow below the radar of your immune system, so that they actually go in a very stealth mode. They reach the target, and then they actually like attack the tumor or the disease that's actually of interest for the researcher. And also one more thing that people are right now actually trying to do is that using the nanoparticles for immune modulation as well, because there is also going to be a very huge immune response whenever there is a foreign body in a human body. So in order to actually shut that down, what people do is that they actually try to like use a lot of interleukins or some type of like factors on the nanoparticle surface. It has to do a lot of stuff with the nanochemistry, surface chemistry. There are a lot of different fields that are actually involved, and I think like there's a huge future for this kind of research where people want to be like really going for precise and personalized medicine, and nanobiotechnology is one of the fields that's actually going in that direction.
Wonderful. Yeah, I know there's a lot of research going on in the immune component now and all these immunomodulatory diseases or opportunities, I should say, actually. So we're actually getting a few sort of a theme of questions. A lot of people are asking, okay, if I want to do a PhD, where should I do it? What's the good country to do this sort of PhD? And what would you say to someone looking to do a PhD?
I think if you want to like look for a PhD and you really want to, first of all, you should really ask yourself whether you really want to go into research as your career, because it's not going to be an easy decision to make. It's actually filled with a lot of frustration, a lot of hardships. But then the best satisfaction that comes to you is that you're doing something that's not only going to affect your career, but maybe, inshallah, in the near future, it might actually also affect the whole humanity. So in that sense, what matters the most is, first of all, choose your field. What is the problem that you want to study? So that's one of the main things जो मैंने देखा है कि Kashmiri students जो हैं, they always try to actually, most of them, since I was also the same 10 years ago, I do not know how to approach for an application process. So most of the times they actually come up with questions, sir, can I actually like, apply there? I think the first thing that needs to be asked is, what is the problem that you want to study, what you want to research on? Cool. Then try to actually also look for really good people who are doing research in that field. And country does not matter. University name does not matter. There are actually also people who are in India, who are in Pakistan, who are in, for example, Eastern Europe, who are really like, the pioneers in their own fields of study. And that's what matters the most. So it's not the choice of the university, choice of the country, but it's the choice of the person you're actually going for, right?
So that sort of brought up 2 points that I wanted to see what you thought about. Was sort of, I wanted to maybe if we could share your PhD experience going from Kashmir and studying abroad, or how and sort of the challenges you faced and sort of the discovery that you sort of found there.
Yeah, I think what I did was I was really fascinated with chemistry and physics, and honestly, I almost failed in molecular biology during the master's, and it was an ironic thing to really happen that I got a PhD in molecular biology program.
Wow.
This was like one of the best programs between ETH Zurich and University of Zurich. It's called MLS, Molecular Life Sciences. It's still there. You can check the website. The deadlines are actually twice in a year, 1st of July and 1st of December. This is one of the best courses that you can go for. Then what I did was that I actually ended up in molecular biology since my heart was not into it. So I actually left the molecular biology lab in the next 7 months. And after 7 months, I really wanted to do something on the borderline of physics and chemistry that has something to do with biology as well. And I ended up in a lab which was doing, experimental physics or physical chemistry, wherein I looked at, protein dynamics in real time. So I was mainly working on the femtosecond or a picosecond or nanosecond timescale spectroscopy, wherein we were looking at protein folding of one of the most fast folding proteins. It's called the physicist's protein. And we were actually looking at the folding dynamics of it, wherein we looked at it that it actually there are some changes that actually happen in the protein backbone on the level of some picoseconds. And then we also had some projects where we were looking at photo modulation of protein aggregation. So based on what type of light you're reflecting on a protein, you can actually either fold it, or you can you can misfold it into an aggregated protein. So after that, what I did is that I wanted to get into research in a field where it's easy for me to actually have my own lab. So especially if I stayed there in ultrafast spectroscopy, first of all, I didn't have that much knowledge, solid background of physics and mathematics. I somehow managed to do my PhD and get a decent three or four papers out of that. And then I decided to actually go in a field wherein it's easy for me to, if in the future something happens that I build my own lab, then that's why I chose biomaterials and medicine. wherein it's far easier to really, with the amount of money you can get in grants, you can actually establish a lab. Whereas that wasn't the case when you are using extremely expensive laser spectroscopy equipment, for example, that would cost $2 or $3 million. So in $2 or $3 million, you can have a full-fledged lab here. So that was my story.
I see. Very interesting. You talked a lot about these molecular dynamics, and I know now there's a lot of big data involved, and cloud computing and stuff. So, could you possibly talk about the relevance of all this bioinformatics now in molecular biology?
Yeah, I think.
Sort of that.
I think when we talk about the big data, so the whole world is going crazy, and rightly so, because there is a lot of information that goes unnoticed, and it's essential for the scientists to really look into the kind of information that they can dig up, that they can milk the data to a level where there is more important information that's actually available. However, in the last 5-6 years, I think Nabil, you would actually really agree with me on that. Machine learning or artificial intelligence has taken
big buzzword.
Yeah, so in that sense, I would recommend people who want to really get into this big data or IT or the bioinformatics side of it, or the computer simulation side of it. I would actually suggest that people should really look into machine learning or computer vision or artificial intelligence and try to see. Because there are there have been a plethora of publications coming out on bioRxiv or ArchiveX from Stanford, where they're actually using machine learning on some neurological problems. And then recently, like last year, there was a paper wherein the computer vision algorithm actually beat 17 or 15 to 17 neurosurgeons to really predict the disease with 90% accuracy. Wow. So in that sense, I would suggest that people should really look into that and try to get that side of the story as well.
Okay, interesting. So would you also recommend, a lot of people are interested in programming? Again, it depends on what you're interested in. And this is one big point that we want to really get across. I mean, there's a lot of interesting fields that are going on, machine learning and this and that, but in the end, I think, as you would say, is it's up to you. Like, what are you interested? What's the intrinsic motivator for you? And I feel like, personally, for me, that's what got me through a lot of my classes. Like, why was I interested in this class? Because there's work. There's always going to be work there.
Yeah.
You want to do work that doesn't feel like work. Yeah. It's something that you're interested in.
But you have to do that. Yeah. So I think that motivation plays a lot of role. I have seen a lot of students. I have seen a lot of friends. I have seen myself as well really getting frustrated and getting to the level where I was literally very tense and very in a depression mode. But I think determination is the key there. You literally have to pull yourself up and then look at the whole kind of a whole lot of sacrifices you have actually done to reach here, and then try to make something out of your life. When you have already come this way, then it means a lot. Now, I think there is a question from Dr. Asal Haq, Professor Asal Qureshi. So he says, he's actually. So he talks about the opportunities in drug delivery and nanotechnology. I think I can actually talk about the broad spectrum of things that people are already doing, there are people who are actually now trying to. So this is the kind of research that I'm really interested in. People are actually trying to make small nanomachines, nanorobots that can actually take the drug. Without letting the immune system know, they can reach the target, and then they actually can actually execute any kind of biochemical process, for example, releasing the drug or killing the tumor cell. That's one thing. The other thing that nanotechnology is actually bringing to the table is there has been a lot of buzz with the CRISPR gene editing technology, and fortunately or unfortunately until now, only one mode of transmission that actually happens for taking the CRISPR to the gene that you want to really target in vivo in a human body. It is through viral particles, or the viruses. So that has its own limitations, and right now people are trying to actually get into that kind of field wherein they are actually going to use nanoparticles for delivering those these CRISPR moieties so that they can actually reach the specific gene and edit there. The other thing that's really important here, what I'm actually doing my research in, is actually on lab-on-a-chip devices, wherein you are trying to make small miniaturized forms of human tissues.
Okay.
So we have seen a lot of times that I think people don't know this, but 95% of the drug trials fail. They actually fail at the clinical trial stage. So the reason for that is something that we call as intragenome variability. That means that even if you are actually doing all the tests in mice, rabbits, monkeys, apes, they might get, you might get really successful results, you might get really good results. But what is more important is, for example, Nabil and myself, we both have a headache. Not from this session, guys, but we have a headache. And Nabil takes a paracetamol tablet, I also take a paracetamol tablet. It might actually, work in a similar fashion, but not in a similar time domain. So Nabil might actually get relief within 5 minutes. It might take me 10 to 15 minutes, but it might even not work with me. So it says that Sloan Kettering Institute in New York is one of the biggest cancer research institutes in the world. The ex-director of the Sloan Kettering Institute once said that we have found a million ways how to treat a cancer-infected mouse, but unfortunately we have failed to find one single way in humans. And the reason for that is that most of the trials, most of the studies actually are done on small lab animals, because it's a very costly affair. So one mouse actually costs you about $120 to even $300 to really raise. So that's a huge amount of money. But what it does is that the variability between a mouse genome and a human genome is actually more than there are stars in the universe. So that could actually give an idea about to think that even if there is a drug that actually works 10 times out of 10 trials, and 100% it works, it might completely fail in a human being. So what we do is that in the lab-on-a-chip devices, what we do is that we make a small 3D construct which has an ink. We use 3D bioprinting technology. So what we do is that we use something that's called as bio ink, because you have to print with it. So you make small structures out of it. So this 3D bio ink has a lot to do with the biocompatibility. It should not actually be immunogenic. It should not create immune problems. So what we do is that we take this ink, and then based on the tissue that we want to make, or the organ that we want to make, we take the cells, the specific cells for that organ, which are of course human derived. So we can take primary cells directly from the hospital patients, or we can take cells that are actually available from the from the companies who actually offer cell lines. So what we do is that then we actually form a construct, and then this construct then we print in different shapes. And based on the construct, based on the cells, we see that within some time, within a couple of weeks, you see some similar kind of processes that are actually happening in a human body. You see it in a dish. So for example, if you take cardiomyocytes and then you print them, and then once you print them, after 2 weeks or 1 week, there you already see the beating pattern. So you actually see I cannot call it a heart, but it's like a miniaturized form of a human working tissue. What it does is that it also brings in the mechanical and biochemical component that is present inside a human body.
That's great that you're bringing that up.
Yes. So
my questions.
Yeah, because that's actually one thing that is missing in simple 2D cell culture lines, wherein you do not have the mechanical component to it. उससे क्या होता है कि आप भले ही आप you actually get good results in the lab. आप monolayers पे good results लेके आते हो. You see a lot of drugs there. You see things happening, but ultimately वो चीज़ें fail हो जाती हैं. तिम क्या शिकरन काम के you Nabil, you understand Kashmiri, right?
Honest.
Okay. So तिम क्या शिकरन काम you तिम इथे वुचो ना lab मज़ मतलब अगर इस कुछ साधन वुचो सिर्फ 2D layer cell culture करो इस तब मज़ शो का drug आसान सुकारी काम मगर सो हेक पत काम करित body मज़ क्या body मज़ 3D structure अफ मज़ mechanical components यवान अफ मज़ biochemical aspect यवान अफ मज़ यासे ये बाकी तिम factor यवान यम जन इस 2D monolayers मज़ हेको यासे recreate करित क्या तब मज़ क्या करन काम वने अगर इस lab on a chip बनाओ इस 3D culture बनाओ तब मज़ आसान automatically तिम सारी चीज़ So तथ मंच आसान ये थे कि we have to take into consideration is mechanical strength अगेंस्ट tissue जो भी हम बना रहे हैं यहाँ पे लैब में it has to reflect the same mechanical strength that you find in the human body. तो उससे क्या होता है कि you can actually go for a lot, we call that personalized medicine, so that we can take cells of a patient from himself or herself, और उन cells को हम लैब में लेके आएंगे, उसके बाद हम 3D टिश्यू बनाएंगे और उस टिश्यू पे हम different drugs को टेस्ट करेंगे. तो ना ही it not only actually helps us in the drug discovery thing, but it also helps us in personalized medicine. हम patient को this is actually going to happen in the future, not now. But what we can do is that we can send the patient home and tell them that we will get back to them in a couple of weeks, so that we test hundreds of those drugs on this thing, and then when we get a hit, then we can actually prescribe that drug to the patient, so that this जो clinical trial failures हैं वो कम हो जाएंगे.
I see.
Yeah.
So what does this sort of a 3D sort of scaffolding model, biomaterial model, have compared to, for example, an in vivo model?
It almost has everything. Yeah. So if we talk in terms of like comparing with in vivo, right now in vivo with regards to us actually means animals, live animals. Yeah. So first of all, you already take out the intergenome variability because you're working with human cells. The only thing that might actually come into effect is still the RH factor. So this might actually play some role, but then it will not be as drastic. It will not be as challenging as cells from another animal. In that sense, we are actually looking at having more successful clinical trials, having more much better understanding about drug discovery, and having a very very good understanding about drug toxicity as well. यहाँ पे मैं एक और important point कहना चाहूँगा कि people are actually trying to do human on a chip. So what they do is that they actually make a modular system wherein they connect different tissues. They have a liver tissue, they have a heart tissue, they have a kidney tissue, and then they look at the toxicities of one drug on the other organ. So for example, there is a hepatic cancer. So you give some drug for the hepatic cancer or any cardiac disease. आप उसमें उस drug को देखते हो, but most of the times what we do is that we have in vivo models, we have lab models wherein we are just looking at a particular tissue. We just look at that. However, what happens is that we completely ignore the effects of that particular drug on different organs. So in this human on a chip system, you can actually look at cross toxicities of one drug that is actually particularly made for treating one disease, but what does it do in a normal other tissue, because it's going to go for systemic circulation inside the body. So in that sense, that's it also helps in that aspect. Yeah. Wonderful.
And it again doesn't have to involve all the money involved in a mouse and getting a mouse and raising a mouse. Yeah. So we're also so again we had some questions on nanoparticles. We also have a few questions on so how do we obtain a postdoc position in a more sort of top tier lab?
I think
publication quality and requirements and
I think publication quality, of course. I mean, if you're a PhD, you need to have a couple of papers, good papers, not necessarily high impact, but as long as the concept that you are actually bringing out is very novel. But at the same time, the application process is all about selling yourself. So if we're talking about really high-end, scientists, उसमें क्या होता है कि most of the times you have literally 20 seconds to sell yourself. You cannot actually write 2-page long email and then say, by the way, I was born here, I was born there. No, they don't have that much time. They don't know you in person. They actually receive 1,000, thousands of emails in a particular single day. So in that madness, how do you, put yourself completely out of the crowd? How do you show yourself as a showman? So in that aspect, I'm going to share one very important point that I always found it really, really helping, especially in my case. And in the case of friends I actually talked to, it was mainly grabbing the attention. The first 5 seconds are very important. So if you look at the emails, you see like a sea of emails, then what is the first thing that actually should hit the other guy? It should be something that is related to his or her research. If you're applying, for example, in the lab of A, and the lab of A is actually working on, say for example, kidney diseases, but in a very particular area of kidney diseases. So what is it that should be actually in your subject line? It cannot be postdoc position in your lab. No way. There are like thousands of such emails. So what you do is that you take a good 1 or 2 weeks, you read about the literature from that lab, you study what's going on, what does the person actually do, what kind of research he has done or she has done, what type of papers he or she has published, and then try to read them, come up with a very simple question. It does not have to be explanatory. It has to be 2 or 3 lines maximum, because you don't want to say a lot about what your vision is. The world is very tricky, so you have to literally keep something to yourself, but at the same time give an idea to the other person that you know the stuff, you have some good ideas. What are they? Let them still be hidden, let people keep guessing, but as long as you project yourself that you are interested in that field, you have some very good questions to ask. Try to come up with that 1 simple or 2 simple words in that email, and then say, by the way, like something like, can the molecule ABC affect on the molecular signaling pathway of this? So automatically when the person sees it, the first thing is, this looks very interesting, because it actually hit the emotional nerve of that person. So he or she is forced to open your email. Then the second thing is, in your email, you first of all have to write 2 lines about who you are, what you have done, and where you're from, and why you are applying. The second paragraph is the most important paragraph, and that has something to do with your vision. You cannot really say, by the way, based on the subject line, I want to do a postdoc. Nobody gives a shit about that. I'm sorry to use this word, but nobody cares about that. So what's more important is that आपको एक्चुअली अपने आप को सेल करना है. तो आप क्या उसमें लिखेंगे? आप लिखेंगे कि मुझे ये प्रॉब्लम बहुत ही पिंच कर रही है, और मेरा ये बैकग्राउंड है, लेकिन ये बहुत ही अच्छा मेरे लिए होगा कि आई विल एक्चुअली यूज दिस काइंड ऑफ एक्सपीरियंस टू आंसर दिस वेरी पर्टिकुलर क्वेश्चन. आपने वो बताया, दैट्स इट. और उसके बाद फाइनल पैराग्राफ में आप ये लिखेंगे कि अपार्ट फ्रॉम PhD, अपार्ट फ्रॉम डूइंग दिस एंड दैट, आई ऑल्सो एम वेरी मच इन्वॉल्व इन some kind of extracurricular activities. जैसे आप किसी fellowship house के या किसी पेज को रन कर रहे हैं जो कि scientifically बहुत ही अच्छा है, या फिर आप कोई काम कर रहे हैं socially, या फिर आपने किसी को help करी है grant लिखने में. But it has to be very realistic. It has to reflect on what you really did. It does not have to reflect on something which you just saw and you're not good at. So because ultimately you're going to get exposed. If you say something on the paper, you don't know how to do it, it will take, because the other person is not stupid, so it will take him or her only a couple of weeks to really know, and then you get fired. That should not happen. So in that sense, and then finally you also have to make sure that you thank the person who has given you 1 or 2 minutes of his or her time to go through your question, and then you close the email.
Great. So look through some more questions, see what we have.
Okay.
We did have a question about writing.
Well, SOP and study plan and scholarships. I think I'm actually also going to talk about. I think I'm going to talk about this thing in very detail tomorrow in Kashmir Guidance Group. That's going to happen tomorrow at 9 p.m. Because I think that very session is going to be about just counseling, and this very session is mainly about like research opportunities and what stage of research you are, what are the different aspects to your research, what do you want to do with it, and how to I think it has more to do something with regards to the difference between the research in Kashmir or Indian setup and the research in the US or other places. So people were asking for SOP and CV. I don't want to repeat myself. I'll be live again tomorrow on Kashmir Guidance page at 9 p.m. Kashmir time. Okay. So what else do we have?
A few more brothers and sisters asking about, as a current graduate student, they're interested in doing a PhD, and again, the steps to apply as a PhD to, for example, areas in Europe, and how do you judge sort of how competitive you are in your application?
I think that's something that I will actually discuss tomorrow, because I really don't want to repeat myself. It gets boring for me as well, and for the listeners as well. And it's better if we just like, you know, really focus on things that are specific to one group and then focus on other things that are specific for the other group. So in that sense, मैं गुजारिश कर रहा हूँ हर एक देखने वाले को कि अगर तो question asked now about you know, application process, CV, SOP कित पार्ट क्या शिलाकून तम खतर यमो अस पगा वार कार कश्मीर गाइडेंस पेजेस पेट 9 बजे शाम च कशर टाइम हिसाब अच्छा बेशा का question आइस Being a PhD student in biomaterial science and biological engineering, this is from Rathar Hilal. He asks, what are the basic requirements one should fulfill in terms of publication quality for securing the postdoctoral? I think I have already answered that question.
There was a question on these subjects, conducting polymers and nanoparticle composites.
Well, I mean, people are already like doing that stuff. There is a lot of research going into, for example, gold nanoparticles because of their, you know, very high compatibility, and people are trying to use them for hard tissue engineering applications. There are also people who are actually doing it on 2D materials. For example, people are actually getting into carbon nanotubes or graphene sheets. But one of the biggest problems with that kind of research is that graphene or carbon nanotubes, they are not actually FDA approved for human use. So even if you will get really good results, I think it will be very good for understanding the oral you know, field and then trying to come up with really good solutions. But then it might not be translatable. So that's one thing. और दूसरी चीज़ ये है कि conducting polymers पे बहुत सारी चीजें अभी आ रही हैं. I was already reading a paper on I don't remember the name of the guy, but what they had done is that they came up with a conducting polymer so that they can actually attach this polymer at a place where there was you know, the spinal cord was actually teared at a place. It was torn at a place. Yeah. So what they did is that they actually like put this conducting polymer so that the brain signals actually are transferred to the lower body area as well. And then it was showing really remarkable effects that within a couple of months, the person was about like at least to move his or her legs. And that was remarkable. I think that's going to actually happen in the future, wherein people are actually going to do more research on this. So उसमें क्या होगा कि people are also like looking at different aspects of neuronal diseases. I think neuroscientists on this page are actually going to shine more light on that. I'm not an expert on that. So, but then there are people who are actually working on, like, for example, activating different areas of the brain by like stimulating electricity from the outside sources, and it might actually have some effects on, for example, neurodegenerative diseases as well. So I mean, we can, at the most, we can just like keep looking at how the field moves and pin our hopes on that. Yeah.
Interesting. So you also shed light. So there's a lot of applications for these biomaterials in regenerative medicine. So in this case of the spinal cord, so this idea again, you know, these materials, they serve as some form of a scaffold for the cells to regenerate. Interesting.
So there are those things as well, and essentially people are also like working on the iPSCs, in you know, induced pluripotent stem cells, because there are cells in the human body, for example, cardiomyocytes, which cannot actually grow beyond a certain level. So even if you have a primary, you have you know, primary cells from a patient or from an animal, you cannot actually culture them beyond you know, particular point, particular number. But you can actually have induced pluripotent cells, which you can then differentiate into like, you know, cardiac tissue or any other tissue what you want. And then in that sense, you can also like direct what type of scaffold you want. So there are scaffolds which just have one function, that's to contain the cells. There are other scaffolds wherein it actually also helps in the proliferation of the cells. There are scaffolds which actually help in immune modulation as well. So there are a lot of things in biomaterials, a lot of research is going on in there. There are some papers also from a UK lab wherein they have shown that they can actually come up with biomaterials which can decide or which can differentiate or decide the fate of any stem cell. It's going, you know, which way, which of the two ways. So that's something which is very interesting, and I hope that the field is going to make a lot of progress in the coming years.
Sounds very interesting.
Yeah.
Definitely something to keep watch. No new questions.
Okay, so I think yeah. Then we had actually a question from Professor Weiss. He was asking about Marie Curie fellowships. So I personally have not actually. I was I was not eligible for the Marie Curie when I got to know that I should apply. But I think there are a lot of them. So there are like individual. I think they call it IE, which are like for your postdoc level. Then there are also Marie Curie fellowships, which are like which have a very huge funding money, so that you can actually also apply for that. But most important for these individual Marie Curie fellowships, I think the timeline was more important. So you have to. There are some, I don't remember it. Don't quote me on that. But there is a lot of information available on that. Some of these fellowships are actually given to those students or those PhDs who are just finished their PhD, who do not have any postdoc experience. And some of the Marie Curie fellowships, don't quote me on that again. I might not have an updated information on that. But some of these fellowships need less than 1 year of postdoctoral experience, or also the time between your finishing of your PhD and your application time. So, but again, I think there are a lot of Kashmiri students, mashallah, who have actually already gotten that fellowship.
Mashallah.
I personally got SNF early career, early mobility. I got an SNF advanced mobility, and if there are questions for that, but I think unfortunately they are actually only meant for people who have done PhD from Switzerland. So if there are people from Switzerland, Kashmiri origin, or Indian origin, or Pakistani, or South Asian, or any other place who want to get any information on that, I will be more than happy to answer any questions on that. Yeah.
Let's see, we got a question.
Okay, so I think yeah, it has been. I hope that we are not actually missing onto anything. What are the available avenues in the field of conducting? Okay, I think we already answered that.
Yep.
So, anything regarding the Al Hamad Khalifa University, Qatar, about PhD program? I think there are some really good questions, but I would really recommend that people should, use Google. If you're really coming up with questions, for example, if there are fellowships available in a particular university, I don't think that's a very valid question, and I would not want to answer that, because you also have to develop a habit in yourself to really search for the information online. Today is not the same day. These are not the same times when I was actually searching for my PhD. So I did not have a laptop at my home. I did not have internet connections. I had to go to Srinagar all the way from Pulwama to really do that 1 or 2 hours of internet searching. Right now you have phones, and all it takes is 5 minutes of your time, and it actually defies the whole logic of really asking similar questions to someone who is really far away, while you can do the same thing within 5 minutes. So that takes a lot of time. So I'm sorry, but I'm not going to answer those questions. Well, there is a question on next-gen RNA sequencing, Inc. RNA biology. Kind of explain how to approach. It's a question from Pirzada Tajamul Mumtaz. I am not an expert in RNA biology. I don't know much stuff, but I know there are a lot of people in Kashmir Scientist page who have really humongous experience in that. But I would actually suggest to you to keep an eye on the lab of George Church from Wyss Institute at Harvard. He's doing some research on that. I will repeat the name again. His name is George Church. Okay, so then there are, most of the questions have actually been on about GPA and MS degree. Did it affect my application? I think I have already answered that. It's not just one. Yeah, I think. PhD in biotechnology in 2007, got appointed as teacher in 2009. My passion was to do PhD in biotech, but due to my job assignment, I was not able to do that. I'm regretting now. Sir, what shall I do now to pursue my... I think there is no time limit for doing anything you want to do. If you are really so passionate about doing PhD, then there's always a time. And if you have been actually involved with teaching, that's even better, because if you want to go out of India, तो उसमें क्या होता है कि people who have this teaching experience, they like that you took a break, you to really find yourself or do something which is not really off the mill, off the mill practice. So if you have done something after your masters and then you now actually think about doing a PhD. But then again, I think the first question that you need to ask is, do you want to do a PhD just for the sake of it, to get a title, or do you want to do really something to do something in the research field? So I would actually suggest that you first of all ask this question to yourself. If you really want to do a PhD just for the sake of title, then I think it's not a good decision. If you want to go for something to really help in research, there is literally a lot of time for that as well. If you cannot go out of Kashmir, you can always try to apply for NET and GRF, clear that, and then go into, for example, Kashmir or Central University or any other university in India, and you can take it from there. Yeah. Okay. So I think it has already been 1 hour, and it has been really lovely talking to you guys, and thanks a lot to Nabil.
Thank you guys
for moderating it. If there's any other question, I will be available tomorrow on Kashmir Guidance page at 9 p.m. India Kashmiri time. So you can always ask questions regarding your application process there and different type of careers that people are actually going to look into. For now, it is a goodbye from us. Inshallah, Allah Ta'ala tana sehat salamat san bekari mehnat esh sukom yat mazan mumkin ase zurat sari ko zyada kaam karnech. The اَسہِ چھُ تھاوُن کم سے کم مدِ نظر ییٚتہِ کہِ کٔشیٖرِ ہٕنٛدۍ حالات کۭتیاہ خراب چھِ تَتھ منٛز تَمہِ سۭتۍ سُہ تَمہِ چیٖز نِش اُبرنہٕ خٲطرٕ what we should do is that we should be a calm, we should be a people جو کہ 4-5 times ज़्यादा काम करेंगे as compared to a normal PhD student, ताकि वो चीज़ जो है ना वो चीज़ हमें ऊपर लेके आएगी. और मुझे लगता है कि कश्मीर as Kashmiri scientists, you know, it's our responsibility towards our homeland to really think about the people who are there. My salute goes out to all the people who are actually in Kashmir and bearing the brunt of the occupation. In that sense, it's hats off to you guys. You're still making it really big. Alhamdulillah, you're still about to move forward in your career. But at the same time, meri ek guzarish hogi. There are a lot of people who are much 100 times better than me in every aspect. I would really request them to really come forward and help our people by just even one single advice actually sometimes actually makes a lot of change. So be always open and try to help others, try to help your own people, and try to help everyone else who is actually they're in need of that help. But there is some duty towards our own Kashmir, our Kashmiri friends over there. So try to do as much as you can, inshallah, in whatever way possible. And I think the only way that's possible from our side is actually the experience, to share our experiences, to share where we fell down so that the next person doesn't fall down. And inshallah, I hope that we as a nation are going really, really, inshallah, forward. The future is really bright. Inshallah, tabnak hamara future hoga, inshallah. Inshallah, next time ke liye tomorrow I will be again there. Till then, Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum.